Hello, good evening. It's another Wednesday, and this is PM Express Corporate Wednesday. The energy sector plays a very crucial role in the socio-economic development of any country. Energy in all its forms is required in many sectors, including the production and supply of goods and services, transportation, domestic and social activities. The growth of any economy, therefore, can only be sustained on the assurance of reliable and adequate supply of petroleum products, petrol, kerosene, LPG, premix and diesel. Statistics from the Ministry of Energy shows that hydropower and petroleum products together account for not less than 35% of the total energy use. Wood fuel in the form of firewood and charcoal still dominate, you'll be surprised, and it accounts for over 65% of total energy consumption. Now, it's the beginning of the year, and we will reflect on the events of 2012 and attempt a projection in 2013 in the energy sector, delving into power generation, supply, as well as the oil sector. It's Corporate Wednesday. And my guest tonight is John Gachi. He's an economic analyst. He will be helping us discuss these concerns and issues. To my immediate left is John Gachi, and then next to him I have Edward Bauer, who is Communications Director at the Ministry of Energy. Gentlemen, it's great to have you here on PM Express. It's Corporate Wednesday.
Thanks for having us.
So let me start with you, Mr. Edward Bauer. Although you are a bit far away from me, I want to find out. We've got several issues with power supply, electricity in particular, and there are questions over whether in the past 8 years or even more, successive governments have done enough to connect communities to power. So roughly, how many communities, let's say in the short term, let's limit it to the last 4 years, have been connected to the national grid?
Okay, that's a good question to ask. First and foremost, let me say good evening to your listeners and wish them a happy new year. Basically, if we want to look at it from the short term, that's when I'm talking of short term, I want to say maybe just the last, because you're talking of successive governments. So the last government that ended on the 6th of January. Basically, over 2,000 communities have been connected.
2,000 communities.
You will realize that the president, in his State of the Nation's address, the one he just did in Parliament, he quoted a figure of 1,700, and this was basically as at 2011. As we speak now, it's really over 2,000. The reason why I'm unable to give you the specific number is because on daily basis we keep on improving on that. Because there are a lot of projects underway that we do know that even after completion, we should be hitting roughly about 83% coverage in terms of our population. And so, yes, that is what we have been doing. And I think this is a project that, as a country, all successful governments should be proud of. Why do I say so? You do know that the whole idea of even rural education, which is now called the National Electrification Scheme, started somewhere around 1989, 1990. As at that time, in terms of coverage, in Ghana was just about 15% of our population. As we speak now, we are way above 72%.
These percentage, do they make sense when really? I mean, what I want to establish is that we say 70% coverage, 60% coverage, but really, does it make sense when we don't have consistent and reliable power supply?
There are two different things. We need to deal with all of them concurrently. We need to first talk about provision of reliable source of energy, not only electricity, but all other forms of energy services. But at the same time, we also need to make these energy services accessible. And so you cannot look at them exclusively. So yes, I do agree that we are talking about coverage, but we must also be talking about quality of services that are being given to the consumers. And I can tell that over the period, there has also been an improvement. I would say that as we speak now, in terms of the quality, it's not what we want it to be. But we need to ask ourselves, where were we? And
what do you want in terms of quality? I mean, what's the energy ministry's target?
Our target is that every Ghanaian should have access to all forms of energy, modern forms of energy, at all times, either for domestic use, either for commercial use, and what have you. And therefore, that is the target, and that is what we have set ourselves to do. And therefore, in all the things that we do, whether it is policy formulation, whether it's even implementation of projects and programs, we always target the whole idea of ensuring that we have quality energy services to the consumers who are primarily Ghanaians.
Okay, I'll come back to you later and we'll explore we'll delve deeper into the quality discussions. But let me come to you, Mr. Gachi. You, as an economist, you heard in my intro saying that the energy sector plays a very crucial role in the socio-economic development of any country. Let's take our country, Ghana. Put it in the economic dynamics and let us understand how energy has fueled or has not fueled the socio-economic development of our country.
Well, the whole issue of energy should be looked at from the demand and supply point of view. He talked about increasing access to all forms of energy. And the moment you increase access, it means that the demand has increased. If those people who are demanding these forms of energy are into business activity, that means that business activities will go on very well, and that will contribute very well to the growth of the economy. Every sector of the economy, agriculture, the services sector, manufacturing sector, the industry subsector, every sector needs energy in order to thrive. So energy is actually the catalyst of the economy. If you look at the past 4 years, all the strategic documents do indicate that energy is seen as, or they describe energy for growth, which means that we have actually accepted the fact that energy is a catalyst for the economy. So that is why all those indications are coming from the ministry. But the most important thing that we should look at, access to energy as a form of demand and supply situation. And what has happened over the years is that the access is increasing. Of course, there's no doubt about that. But the supply is actually not meeting the access to energy sources that we have in the country. And that is the big challenge that is posed to us. And that is actually affecting the long-term horizon of planning for businesses in the country. And that is actually affecting the cost structure of businesses in the country. We can also look at energy as a means of contributing to the well-being of the people. If we want to measure the social and economic well-being of people, the access to energy, the quality access to energy, the consistency in supply of energy to the people is also a measure of the well-being of the people. So that is why it's a serious economic issue.
If you look at, for example, the fact that Ghana as a country, and with the strength of our economy and the capacity of our energy supply, we supply energy to Togo, at the current state. Really, when you hear this, what goes on in your mind? Do you think that continuing to honor obligations to supply to Togo, for example, is healthy for our efficient management of the power we have? Yeah, I'm asking Gachi because I'm putting it in the economic context in a sense that I want to believe that we have a certain locus of a problem with power generation, and yet we're supplying to Togo on the basis of the demand and supply. So, Mr. Gachi, does this make economic sense? Maybe I should put it that way.
Yeah, if you look at the underpinnings of that agreement, at the time that we enter into those agreements, we believe that we are in position to do that. But if you look at the broad issue, you realize that we also sometimes by the agreement we can export power to Cote d'Ivoire, and sometimes we can also import power from Cote d'Ivoire. And sometimes they also do have some challenges. So it's an obligation that sometimes we are forced to. So
you will say it makes economic sense. That's what I wanted to establish.
Well, when we are in difficulty, we may complain that it doesn't make economic sense. But if you are living together with people, you need to depend on each other. So that is the situation that we find ourselves in sometimes. Okay.
So, Mr. Bauer, maybe you should tell me, how viable is this supply to Togo? What's the status?
You see, the first and foremost, we make a fetish out of this whole idea of supply power to Togo, because even under normal circumstances, assuming that we are producing power to our and catering for our domestic needs,
all our domestic needs,
we give Togo and Benin combined 50 megawatts a day. We give them 50 megawatts.
So we have enough for our local consumption as a country, national demand.
Yes, the truth of the matter.
And then we are able to get surplus to supply.
The truth of the matter is this. The 1996 crisis, in terms of power crisis that we had, the 2003 one, the 2006, were all due to insufficient generation of power. And it was purely because, of course, you do know that we had drought. And at that time, in terms of our thermal component, we didn't really have enough installed generation capacity.
Yeah.
The 2012 crisis that commenced on the 28th of August was not as a result of the fact that we didn't have the capacity to generate. It had to do with another form of vulnerability as a country that we had, and that had to do with the dependence on the West Africa gas pipeline as a fuel for the generation of power. So it was just something that we found ourselves in. Granted that, for example, the pirates did not work at what they did in terms of Togo to be able to breach the pipe. We wouldn't have had that situation. So as a country, even normally during Christmas, and I'm using just this last Christmas, normally during Christmas, you see that in terms of our low demand, it's always very high because you have factories working overtime to be able to produce more for Christmas. You have a lot of people even using their domestic gadgets because they need fridges and refrigerators and what have you. But even with that, in terms of at peak hours, and when we talk about peak hours, that's a period where we use a lot of power between 6 and 11 p.m. every day in the evening. Our peak demand was roughly around 1,700, 1,800 megawatts. Now, in terms of our installed generation, assuming that all our units are working when we have sufficient fuel for all of them, currently, in terms of our installed generation, we are talking about 2,443.5 megawatts. So, obviously, we have enough And
this we generate from various sources.
Yes, we generate from hydro, from thermal. And in fact, the interesting thing is that also from
natural gas,
renewable energy.
Renewable energy. How many? What's the percentage of energy generation we get from renewable energy?
In terms of percentage, I can tell you that it is nothing to write home about because we are talking about roughly now we are around 0.1%.
But
in terms of our energy
something to talk about.
Yes.
Right?
No, I'm just trying to say. In fact, our target.
No, what I mean is that we are saying that the energy generation from renewable energy in terms of percentage is nothing to write home about.
Yeah, compared to the larger.
I'm asking whether it's still relevant to cite that as a source of energy generation.
Yes, it is very, very relevant. In that, for example, you see that in terms of solar installations that we've done in various communities, particularly off-grid communities like the island communities in Ada and those areas, to hospitals, to schools, where they can just simple vaccination drugs and other things, they can store them in fridges and that. We've done somewhere around 9,536 installations. And these are renewable sources of energy for such communities, for schools, for them to be able to read in the night and other things. So yes, we may look in terms of the general energy mix, it's just about 0.1. Our target is to get to 10% by 2020 because one of the things we realized over a period was that we were not getting a lot of people to invest in that area because one, it is capital intensive, and two, sometimes you are not too sure whether even a distributor will purchase power from you. But we'll be able to cure that particular problem by the introduction of the renewable energy law, which gives certain conditions that, for example, there is a compulsory purchase clause that is there. So, for example, if you were an investor and you came to Ghana, you put in, say, about 10 megawatts source of renewable energy like solar. ECG is mandated that as part of its own energy mix in terms of buying power either from VRA or from Asogli or from whatever, supposed to also buy some part of the power from you as a producer of solar energy. The whole idea is to ensure that investors are guaranteed in terms of their margins, that over a reasonable period of time, they should be able to break even and really make those margins. And so these are some of the things that we are doing. But generally, I think that as a country, the issue really now is not really about the fact that we do not have the gadgets that are there. For example, the generation plant to produce power.
But what is it?
It has to do with reliability of fuel. And that's why, for example, the gas processing plant is something that we should, maybe in the course of the program,
Okay, so, just walk me through now. Let's digress a bit and talk about the Bui Hydro Dam. The Bui Hydro Dam, the whole concept of the, Bui Hydro Dam was to augment the power supply, power generation in our country. What's the current status? The last time I checked, it was supposed to have been 90% complete.
Yes, we are sure that by the first quarter of this year, we will commission the first unit. You see, we are commissioning them in terms of units, 3 different sets. The first unit of 133 megawatts. Because if you look at Bui generally, the Bui has a total of 400 megawatts, assuming that we're able to bring everything on board. This first quarter of the year, we're trying to bring the first unit on board. Hopefully by the close of the year, we should have brought all the 3 units on board. Of course, but you do know that that also is heavily dependent on weather, on water and what have you. We should be able to get at least a minimum level of water in the dam to be able to generate the power. So we are hoping that over a period of time, we will have good rains. The good Lord will smile on us to get
us the rain.
And then so Bui, that is the status of Bui now. But beyond Bui, which is
so how much of energy is Bui expected to add to our?
I was just at 400 megawatts.
Okay.
Because if you look at
that is when the full when it operates at full capacity. So currently we're expecting like 20% of that, or
so that's about over 30%. Over 30%, because we're talking about a third of it will come in the first quarter between now and March. We should be able to get that. And hopefully in the other season, we should be able to bring the others on board.
What about the Asogli power plant?
Asogli has always been operational. The only problem with Asogli is that it has no fuel to run. Unfortunately, as compared to
Asogli runs on natural gas?
Natural gas alone.
From West Africa Pipeline?
Yes. It's just
so the problem affected Asogli?
So since August 28, Asogli has never operated. Because
until now?
The lack was that some of the generation plants that we have, for example, in Takoradi, can run both on light crude oil, diesel. In fact, it's not only both, but it's because it's light crude oil, diesel, or natural gas. And so when that happened, what we did was that we quickly had to switch into using light crude oil and diesel. The only thing is that also comes with cost. Because if you look, apart from hydro, the next cheapest form of producing power in terms of unit cost is natural gas. And so that also came with cost to the extent that the truth of the matter is that on daily basis, VRA, it costs the VRA roughly between around $2.7 million a day.
But why is government not finding, or maybe I shouldn't say government, why is the ministry not finding an effective alternative to resolving the VRA situation you're just telling me about? That's a bad case, right?
Yeah, the 2.7.
Yes.
No, obviously, government was doing that because, for example, when it came to light crude oil, that was being imported to run those. Government was doing that. But the long and short of it, it is still VRA that is doing it. The assumption is that just because VRA in itself, in its own projections, might not have anticipated that there will be a breach of the West African pipeline. And therefore, this becomes an additional cost to them. And that was where government was coming in to cushion them. So, for example, in terms of the cargoes that they needed to be able to run most of these gens, they had to get it, and government had to give those things, the funds for them to do that. But whether it is government or VRA, government is a 100% shareholder of VRA. And therefore, whether it is VRA that is spending that particular money or it is government itself taking it from the national coffers, it's still the same thing. It's the state that is losing that amount of money just because of the breach of the West Africa.
John, I mean, listening to Mr. Bauer, it does appear everything is fine and smooth. But would you say that as a country, I mean, our state institutions and the entire state machinery has done enough when it comes to the relevant investments, the attention given in terms of policy direction and provision of infrastructure in the area of power generation? Have we, as a country, done enough?
Well, if you look at the product pipeline that we have now, or the ongoing project with respect to energy, we will say that in the past 8 years, a lot of investment has been made in the energy sector with respect to hydro, thermal, and then now renewable energy. If you could
speak up louder a bit. Yeah.
And then now renewable energy is also coming on board, even though if you look at the program's outline, you will realize that we are still very skewed towards the traditional sources of power generation in the country. And again, if you look at the gas project in the western region, that's a huge investment, and then the benefit is not only going to bring about efficiency in supply of power, but that is also going to bring about lower cost of accessing power in the country, and that is going to be very good for the economy of the country. So I would say that we have actually speed up and then step up investment in the energy sector over the past 8 years.
Are there more areas you would as an economist recommend that a lot more private investment or government-directed investments go into to improve?
Well, even though some people are against private investment in the energy sector, but I think that is not the best. We need to have a mix of public sector-led investment in the energy sector and the private sector investment in the energy sector. We have seen some examples already in the country, and they are yielding fruit. We need to support that effort in allowing the private sector to collaborate with government to invest heavily in the energy sector. But that also has implication for us. That will mean that we need to actually move gradually towards a full recovery.
Full cost recovery.
Full cost recovery in the energy sector.
And that will mean that we have to pay realistic rates for the energy we consume.
So we need to be thinking about all those things in the long term.
What about requiring, for example, in GRIDCO and ECG, requiring investments to expand their distribution outlets and capacities? Should consumers be paying in advance to enable GRIDCO or ECG expand its capacity to provide us better service?
Well, generally, consumers pay when the service is available to them. But what is needed right now, and then if you look at the strategic plan for the energy sector, it is very clear that plans have been outlined and some investment has already started going into those areas to actually increase the capacity of transmission, generation, and distribution in the country. So all that we need to wait to see that those investment outlines should be speed up in order to actually bring about efficiency and conservation of energy within the energy sector for the economy.
But you know something. It is important that he referred to a particular document, and that's about a strategic document.
Yeah.
In fact, in 2011, there was a generation and transmission master plan that was rolled out, a 15-year plan from 2011 to 2026.
Okay.
And in this particular investment, took into account the type of investments that we need, both public and private investments. We looked at the type of the best suited technologies that we need to employ, and then the least approach in terms of cost, in terms of the least cost approach that we needed. And these were all based on our low demand forecast for this particular. So basically, as a country, we are very sure about where we need to invest and how we need to invest. The question is finding the money to do that. Remember that in terms of investment in energy competes with other sectors of the economy, education, health, and what have you.
But we need to prioritize.
Yes, and that's the point. So as a country, that's what we need to do.
And full cost recovery won't be bad if that is going to be a source of funding.
And that obviously, full cost recovery will not even bring issues about, will not even have issues about subsidy again to debate on. And hopefully utilities will have the needed money, because mostly any time there's a subsidy introduced into any of the products, whether it is electricity, whether it is even petrol or diesel or LPG or what have you, government has to find money from somewhere to pay for it. So as a country, we need to ask ourselves, do we need to subsidize energy services?
How much is government subsidizing energy?
Figures now, off my head, I will not be able to tell you. But
give us raw estimates.
But on the average, let me use, for example, if we talk about energy, let's give an example like, say, petroleum products. On petroleum products, we realized that just last year, between January and September, at least I still remember that figure very well.
$60 million.
No, 600. 600 million. And so ask yourself, the gas processing plant costs us as a country roughly between $800 and something to $1 billion. So it means that if we were to take this money, that's what we could do. If we could take even the $600 million, the number of schools that we can build. You understand the point I'm making? So as a country, we need to ask ourselves, is that what we want to go? But of course, we must also realize in the biblical sense where they say, remember that the poor shall always be with you. Is that not what the scripture says? Mm-hmm. So even as a country, we need to also begin to start realizing that in as much as we want to go full cost recovery, we must also find ways in which we can cushion the vulnerable. So that at the end of the day,
which ways so that
continuing there have always been innovative ways government has done. Government has deliberately intervened in terms of, for example, anytime you increase, say, let's say petrol
or kerosene,
what happens is that it has a trickling down effect on transportation, on food, and what have you. And mostly food prices is because of transportation, because bringing it from the farmlands to marketplaces. That's the point. Government sometimes deliberately can intervene in those areas, trying to keep fares at a very low price, particularly in vulnerable areas. Because subsidizing, for example, petroleum products generally, you may be using, I'm not saying you are using a four-wheel drive. You may be using a four-wheel drive, I may be using a four-wheel drive. If you look at the amount of consumption of petrol by people who live above average, you see that they spend more. Because in my village, that the people will come from Bongo to Bolga, and they fought. So they don't even need a bus to come.
Yeah.
But you will use a 4-wheel drive just to your house and back to multi-TV. And before you realize, government will be subsidizing the rich and pretending that they are subsidizing the
Subsidy
poor.
benefits
So
the
yes,
rich
there must be other innovative ways in which we can look at subsidizing the poor. Because if we want to have just a blanket thing saying that, look, we do not want to increase petroleum prices, we do not want to increase utility bills, VRA and ECG and what have you have been crying to PURC, asking for increases in utility bills.
Perhaps it's time for government to let go of its hold of VRA, maybe.
No, but it is time for us as a country that we begin even from the media, to really conscientize people, to let them know that, look, it is only proper that we pay realistic bills. And then when we pay realistic bills, then we can ask of the utilities to perform. Sometimes you don't hold my hand, one hand in the back and tell me that I should fight and win a fight. So sometimes we need to find a way of ensuring that we really provide the necessary ammunition that the utilities need to be able to provide, to be able to,
John, you want to say something?
Yeah. I think before we talk about full cost recovery and removal of subsidy, we need to take pragmatic steps, especially with respect to the institutions which are managing our utilities. If you take electricity, for example, in 2009, the total debt of the Tema area alone was much, much more than the amount they were in need of to invest in capacity. Now, so you ask yourself, if they are not able to collect this money that people owe them, what is the basis of asking for more money for investment through increase in tariff? It doesn't work. So if they bring about some efficiency in the management of these entities, I would not call for privatization of electricity, because Cameroon did it some time ago. They couldn't experience the level of efficiency they wanted.
What are your fears, really?
Yeah, my fear is that the system is not being managed very well. And if it is managed very well, I think they will have a lot of free money to do a lot of reinvestment in their capacity, and that is not being done, to my mind. And we need to work on all those things before. And then again, subsidy in Ghana should not only be looked at if it's only helping the rich. That is a fact. That is economic fact. But if you look at subsidy, it goes to every spectrum of the economy. And
so perhaps we need to do targeted subsidy.
Exactly. So we need to do targeted subsidy. If not so, we'll create a lot of economic hardship in the country. Well,
you're watching PM Express. My name is Stephen Enti. As always, you can join us by text 1760, or you can post your Facebook comments on our Facebook or facebook.com/Joy News. We are also on Twitter, and you can follow us on our Twitter feed, Joy News on TV. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll delve into issues of the oil sector. Stay with us. Welcome back to PM Express Corporate Wednesday. It's Wednesday, and we're discussing energy and the effect on our economy. As we enter 2013, it's relevant for us to discuss how the country has performed in the energy sector in the previous year and make projections into the new year. But every once in a while, a program comes along which defines the voice of a generation. Multimedia Ghana is once again in the forefront of providing relevant and timely information through a new and exciting program. News Generation is a 30-minute news magazine program for young people aged between 12 and 15. The program aims to provide relevant and independent news for children and to give them a voice while highlighting issues of child rights. The first transmission was on January 6th, 2013. News Generation shows every Sunday on Multi TV for Kids channel at 3:30 p.m. It's also on Joy News channel 4 p.m. also on Sunday. So make a date with us this Sunday on Multi TV for Kids to watch another edition of News Generation. The time is 3:30 p.m. on Kids channel, and it's 4 p.m. on Joy News channel. Now let's launch into our discussion on the oil sector. I'll start with you, John. The oil production in the Jubilee field, per report, is in excess of 105 million barrels a day. You know, that's according to Cosmos Energy. What does this mean? I don't know whether John is the right person to answer or you. I mean, I want to find the economic relevance of this, and then I'll come to you, and then we'll discuss the. So, John, 105 million barrels per day.
No, it's 1,000.
1,000. It's not 1,000. It's 105,000.
Yeah.
Yes,
if it's
right.
million, we'll be in.
we would be replacing Saudi Arabia. Go ahead,
Yeah,
right. So 105,000 barrels per day. Economically.
Before we get there, we need to indicate that in the 2012 budget, we were expecting 120,000 barrels per day.
Yeah.
That was what we used to estimate the budget.
Yeah.
We couldn't meet that, which meant that in 2012, some projects which were tagged with the expectation of revenue from the oil production
of course,
were
suffered.
affected.
Yeah.
Again, if you look at 105,000 per day, we get a lot of things from the oil production, our royalty, we get our corporate tax, we get our additional carried interest, and all those in surface rental, etc. So when we put all these things together, what it means is that our revenue take from the oil is stepping up a bit, and our opportunity to finance more projects is also being enhanced. That is what it means to us.
Okay. So, Mr. Bauer, tell me, where is all your money going?
That's a good question you ask. But obviously, I think that if you were to monitor, because based on the laws that have been captured, that's the Petroleum Revenue Management Law, we have all the expenditures are supposed to be tracked. Even the 70% that goes into budget support is project specific, and therefore even at Parliament, all those projects are supposed to be. And I'm convinced that if we were to look at that and look at even the report of public interest and accountability, we should be able to know. But I think that one of the things we need to realize that yes, it's true. The point he made, the point that our target was that because we got first oil really on the 28th of November. It's just that the commissioning was on the 15th of December. Now, if you look at that, our target was that even the preceding year, that was supposed to be 2011, by June, we felt that we were going to get 120 barrels, 1,000 barrels a day, and then produce about 120 million cubic feet of gas in a day. Unfortunately, we didn't get that because we ran into complications. The good news is that now we are producing the excess of 100,000 barrels a day. Our hope is that by mid-year this year, we should be able to do the 120 megawatts, because we're talking about power. 120,000 barrels of crude in a day. This comes with some good news in that, one, as a country, you know that over a period of time there has been some sustained increase in global crude prices, and therefore increasing your production means that you are going to have more money. No two ways about that. Luckily enough, we have a system that monitors how the monies are used judiciously. We have a well-informed civil society that also checks how the monies are used. And this is
devoid of political interference?
Yeah, obviously, those decisions are, in terms of the expenditure, whether you like it or not. For example, if you were to take the Heritage Fund and then the Stabilization Fund, those are irrespective whether you are Party A or Party B, that is a prescription given by the law, so you need to do that. The 70% that goes in terms of budget support is purely based on what are the priorities of government at a particular time.
Yeah.
You would not expect that if Mr. Bauer were to be the president, our priorities would be the same.
Which you're hoping to, right?
Will be different from maybe what President Mahama will do. But obviously the priorities of the current government will also determine how those monies are being expended. So yes, these could be colored in terms of political decisions, ideological inclinations, priorities, and what your manifesto had said, for which you were elected into office. So these are some of the cocktail of issues that will have to be dealt in terms of the expenditure. But I think that all in all, in our oil sector, we are not doing very badly at all.
Really?
We are not doing badly. We are not doing badly.
John, you share that view that in oil management we're not doing bad.
Yeah,
but there's some who argue that we need to make the oil management more transparent. I mean,
well, if you come to the revenue management, the transparency issues have been very clear. You have anything that you do, especially from the point of view of the minister, you need to gazette it, you need to publish it in 2 daily papers, you need to put it on the website of Bank of Ghana and the Ministry of Finance. You have a public interest and accountability committee actually monitoring what has been done from the source of revenue generation and then accountability. And then they come with their own report. In
so
fact,
you don't think we have issues with transparent management?
I don't think we have serious issue with transparency. You see, if you look at the model we have chosen, see, we have borrowed from most of the acclaimed models in the world, the Norwegian model, etc. We have actually tried to build in more transparency and governance mechanisms in our model. I think we need to appreciate what we have now and then implement them judiciously. And then what he was saying earlier on, you realize that the Act demands that you need to specify some key priority areas. And because we want to sustain investment in the area that we have chosen, it has given a limit of about 3 years before you can vary those areas. So if you look at, for now, we have prioritized investment in infrastructure. And the good news is that if it's giving us about 3 years before we can vary, that it means that it has given us the power to sustain investment in infrastructure. And that's the good news.
Yes.
Yes. So I think we have a very good document that should guide us.
What about the expectation? Do we not have too high an expectation on oil revenue? And possibly, you could tell us, should we be managing our expectations as a country?
Yeah, I think Mr. Bao will add, but initially we started managing the expectation, but along the line, I think we have actually slacked a little bit. We need to step it up because, you see, if we
were expecting 120,000 and then we couldn't make 120,000, we are making something in excess of 100,000. That is dashed expectation. Really.
Yeah, you see, the expectation we are talking about is diverse. Number one, some people think that the resource is coming from their region, so they need to benefit more than others from the country. And then maybe those who are managing the country, the economy, also look at Article 36 too, that there should be, of the Constitution, that there should be even distribution of economic resource in the country. There should be balanced development of the country. You should make sure that you balance your development effort of the country. So that becomes a challenge. So there should be a pragmatic way of trying to tame down the expectation of those people. And what I actually prescribe is that in trying to manage that expectation, you need to discriminate in favor of those people. If you look at the Public Interest and Accountability Committee report, you realize that at least 2 projects each across the country in every region have been identified being financed from the oil revenue. Now, I believe like what is happening in Nigeria, they call derivation. If the oil comes from maybe Delta State, in the distribution or in the allocation, maybe they get 2% more than other regions in development effort. So we can discriminate our attention when it comes to infrastructure development for the Western region by, say, if we give 2 projects for each of the 9 regions, that we give, let's say, 5 projects or 2 or 3 projects for the Western region. I think that's what we can be doing for now. So that is the expectation management I'm talking about from the regional level, not just the frivolous aspect of some people saying that this is the way the oil revenue should be managed. That's not what we are talking about.
Right, Mr. Bauer, so still on managing expectation. Do you think that Ghanaians, for example, I mean, the MPP's flag bearer and their party's policy on free education was going to be funded really by revenue from oil, but the oil revenue, really, is it that much that we can put all, maybe, or a certain percentage into funding free senior high school, for example?
I think that you couldn't have been far from right when you say we should manage our expectations very well. If you would allow me, even just a point before I make on this transparency, because that comes into the expectations.
That's fine.
You see, we are always interested in looking at transparency when the money has come into the kitty. We say, how are we spending it? But sometimes we are not careful to even look at how even the decisions were taken before even the money came. So in terms of contract negotiations and other things, these are areas that we should look at. Even the contracts that between, the IOCs and the government of Ghana, we need to look at all those things. That is one of the reasons why, if you look at the Ministry of Energy and for that matter government, I said, look, we must find a way of ensuring that people even have access to the the petroleum agreements. So we publish them on our website. Besides that, if you look at the Petroleum Commission Act, the Petroleum Commission Act actually directs the Petroleum Commission to keep a register of all what they call it, the petroleum agreements, such that if you were to walk to Petroleum Commission and say, look, I want to see agreement XYZ in Ghana, Petroleum Commission should be able to give it to you. That is what the law says. We have also, to a very large extent, also looked at, we have subscribed to the extractive, the EITI.
Yeah.
And we've extended it from the mining sector to that. And these are all areas to ensure that, yes, not only should we just look at when the money arrives, but even before that, how do we negotiate to ensure that we have the money? And whether we are able to ensure that people don't get these things. Because somebody can negotiate a deal for government of Ghana, you see it on paper. Meanwhile, you see that if they were to be honest in negotiating it, they would have done better than we do. So these are the areas. Yeah. But now to the expectations. Look, sometimes I wonder, I look at the figures that cocoa brings to us, or even the service industry brings to us, and I ask myself, why are we so excited about the oil revenue?
Because we're getting far less.
Yes, far less. And the reason is that, we've all been familiar with watching programs where you see the sheikhs in the Arabian world. Come here, you see Dubai. If you've traveled to Dubai before, you see the airport. You say, "Oh, this is all because of oil and what have you." Yeah. And therefore, when it was announced in Ghana in 2007 July that we had found oil, we said, "God," like the Nigerian, we said, "We have finally arrived." So that was the expectation of Ghanaians. It was the duty of state, and I think state tried to do in that.
Perhaps it was the politicians who over-touted.
Yeah, of course. I mean, oil now,
black gold,
and everybody who was saying you're worried. So basically, that was the point, and it was no fault of any Ghanaian to have such expectations. It was our duty to be able to find a way of managing that. In fact, if you look at the IOCs and particularly GNPC, they have tried as much as, particularly in the 6 catchment area districts in the Western region, to really ensure that, look, their expectations should not go over the route. Because, yes, just as I said, the Constitution itself says that irrespective of wherever the resource is coming from, we must find a way of developing it. Truly speaking, if we were to say even the prescription that was suggested by the Western Regional House of Chiefs, which later on they rescinded on that because they thought there were other better alternatives, the amount of 10% of, say, in that year, we had about $300-something million from oil. So 10% of it will be how much? That's roughly about 30 million. Is it 30,000? I'm not too sure exactly the mathematics. How many projects can they do?
Very little.
Little. So, but if you look at Western region, just within that particular year, we were connecting, in terms of electricity, we were connecting over 400 communities to the national grid. 10% of the oil money cannot do that. You understand? So, as a country, we must begin to say that in the short term, we should not think that the oil is going to be the panacea of all our economic issues. However, we must make conscious efforts to ensure that Ghanaians, even at its infant stage, Ghanaians play key roles in this. And this is the area we should be looking at. But in terms of revenues, I think that there's still the good old agriculture and the services industry
are still doing well.
Doing well.
We'll take a quick break. My name is Stephen Anti, and I'm here with John Gachi and Edward Bauer, Communications Director at the Ministry of Energy. We'll be right back, and when we return, I'll put a question to Mr. Bauer, what we should do with Tema Oil Refinery, whether it's performing at its optimum, and what the suggestions of recovery should be. We'll be right back. Welcome back to PM Express. We have just a few minutes to wrap up. So let me put the crunchy question to you, Mr. Bauer. What is the current state of the Tema Oil Refinery, TOR?
Okay. TOR has been a victim of the subsidy talk we're giving here.
The mismanagement?
Obviously, it can't be a uni problem, as it were. So there could be issues of mismanagement over a period of time, over the years. Issues of even subsidy, government not really paying back its debt, indebtedness to TOR. It could be even as a result of a lot of factors. But the long and short of it was that Tema Oil Refinery, particularly in 2009, in terms of indebtedness, was about 1.7 billion Ghana cedis.
And then the NDC government came, and then they cleared some of
They
the
cleared
debt.
it. But I'm telling
it's
you,
a cyclical situation.
No, but the truth of the matter
we
is that
always
even,
go back and
yes,
forth.
But one of the things that government decided to do was that, look, we shouldn't just be clearing debt and just be waiting in it. We must have a comprehensive look at it. So there was an audit, a technical audit and an operational and financial audit that was conducted on that. The report has been brought up. The recommendations have been set. The recommendations are talking of even the equipment itself. Some of them need to be replaced.
Still at the cost of government, of course.
Government or any strategic investor.
And what's the strategy?
The strategy is to at least make Tema Oil Refinery the books of Tema Oil Refinery look good for an investor to be able to come in. Because the long term.
What about privatization?
Yeah, that's part of it. But we could do that. But the issue is that we start from somewhere.
Okay.
We start from that. And at least what we are starting is that, look, if you may not have somebody who will come and take over the whole of Tema Oil Refinery, we should be looking at situations where at least could come and take part in terms of equity shares within that. Even though me as an individual, I have always never been too excited about privatization. When you are talking about privatizing even the ECG, I ask you, just look at water. When we give out water, just for management contract water, what happened? So I am not a total fan of the fact that when you give it to the private sector necessarily performs well. In fact, evidence, at least within Ghana, has not shown that way. So we are looking at that, and there are recommendations that have been put in place. Some are technical, some are financial and operational. That is exactly what we are doing. And hopefully, TOR should come back to where it was when it was first created in the 60s.
You're very confident of that.
Very confident.
So 2013, what should we expect to be the direction of government towards making TOR what it's supposed to be?
2013 basically has to do with clearing the others, because now TOR still has roughly about 600 million Ghana cedis debt to really clear. So this is one area we need to clear. Government will definitely need to also give clear directions to management as to where we need to go. And where we need to go is to make TOR a very efficient, because currently it is simply unacceptable. For example, in LPG, TOR just produces only 30% of our requirement annually. That is unacceptable. We should be able to see a situation where TOR should be able to produce more instead of we rely on bulk distribution companies. So this is the target that government has. That first will help clear that, then we inject efficiency into that. And the mid-term will be to get a strategic investor to come in and expand the facilities.
John, you are as an economist. I mean, I know that TOR will be one dent in your mind when it comes to efficient management of Ghana's oil. I mean, TOR has not lived up to its expectation. I mean, the suggestion, I spoke to Imani Ghana, and one of the suggestions is to offload some assets of TOR to private sector to manage. And then, so for you as an economist, do you think that the suggestions or recommendations coming from the Energy Ministry are something to go by, or you have a better option to bring TOR back on its feet?
Well, if you look at the Energy Ministry itself, the strategy document they have, what they want to do, and that is what they want to do, especially starting this year, is to ensure they inject technical efficiency and financial efficiency to TOR. So that is what we want to see for them. And then they also expect to ensure they provide the environment for private sector investment in the refining sector, and that is the midstream sector of the oil and gas sector. But the way TOR has been, struggling the past 8 years, if you look at all countries which are actually engaged in oil production, refining becomes very important. And if we want to go by that, then I think that we need to actually open the space for the private sector to engage in refinery activities.
So you also think that privatization,
but what
privatization is the way forward?
Is to offload the assets
some of the assets. One of the
I believe the same thing Mr. Bao is talking about when he's talking about strategic investor.
Yeah.
But the point is that we need to bring some level of competition in the refinery subsector of the industry. So we shouldn't only be looking at restructuring TOR, but we should also look at opening the space for a private investor or private investors to actually bring about setting up and refineries in the country.
Okay. So, Mr. Bawa, help us understand the roles of the various stakeholders in the energy sector, TOR, GNPC, Ministry of Energy. I mean, what roles do these various stakeholders play?
The Ministry of Energy basically is in charge of policy formulation. It gives the broad framework as to how the sector should go. And that is not only for the oil sector, but also for the power subsector. Now, GNPC has a mandate to work particularly in the upstream, and that has to do with exploration and development and production. That's where of our hydrocarbon resources. That's the mandate they have.
Core mandate.
Core mandate. Now, we also now have, even in the midstream, we have the Ghana National Gas Company that is supposed to collect gas and then also market that. Then we have the downstream that has to do with TOR is one, BOST is another in terms of storage. You have MPA, which is the regulator within that. So that is basically the rule that has been set out, such that, and of course, very important, I've also mentioned, in the upstream sector, one of the problems that particularly IOCs and even the international community and people who play, the players within the energy sector were worried about was the fact that we did not have an independent regulator. Because the impression that was created was that GNPC was playing the role of a player and a referee, even though it was not true. The reason was that it was the Minister of Energy who had the power to play the role of a referee. But the Minister of Energy would need technical advice. And within Ghana, obviously, we did not expect the minister to go to Agugulishi and get the advice. He has to go to GNPC. They have the technical expertise. So in giving that advice, IOCs were not comfortable. Other players within the sector were not comfortable. Thanks be to God, now we have an independent regulator, and that's the Petroleum Commission, which is supposed to regulate that. So these are the functions of the various sectors. Of course, but the umbrella body is the Ministry of Energy that gives out the government policy, which becomes the direction for all the other sectors.
Right, John.
Yeah, I think going forward, the Ministry of Energy has a huge task to the people of Ghana. It is expected that by 2016, we should have a generation capacity of about 5,000 megawatts.
Yeah.
That is not enough. We need to have a clean audit of the system to know, the energy need of the country from time to time. That is, statistics is not provided by the ministry. That is not good enough. So I think they need to actually...
We do have.
They need to publish those things from time to time. Because if you look at the LPG need of the country alone, we need to have a clear statistics, and then we need to know the way forward. The strategy being put in place to make a consumption of LPG for commercial and the domestic use in the country very, very attractive. But we are not getting all those information on.
Okay,
I'll
quickly have to read
on frequent basis.
You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something. For example, you see the gas processing plant.
Yeah.
If you look at our annual consumption of LPG, it's about 280,000 metric tons a year. The gas processing plant is supposed to provide 277,200 metric tons. So that gives you a fair. If TOR will be giving us 83,000 metric tons in a year. Strategically, we will be supplying that.
Yeah.
And in terms of the clear plan for us, that's what I told you, that we had a forecast, a 15-year forecast that talks about it, and we took into consideration the low demand.
Because if we are going to have generation capacity of 5,000 by 2016. Concurrently, we should be knowing what the estimation for
the low demand. Yes, that is purely based on that. Yeah. But I do agree.
If we don't do that, we may claim that we have some, energy supply by 2016.
Well, I'm sorry, we can't go with that. We have to wrap up. And Emmanuel Agyemang says that, Steve, Energy Ministry has performed abysmally over the past years because of square pegs and round holes that's going on there. They should tell us the truth about the West African gas pipeline, because the stories giving Ghanaians are too lengthy to be true. And then Alukos from Tamale, you say, my concern is simple. What accounted for the recent shortage of fuel in the country? Is government broke? No, yes or no?
No,
government is not broke. The problem with energy is the chronic inefficiencies in the distribution system. And as exposed as about ECG, there is no point about full cost recovery if the wastage at ECG can enable them run efficiently, or rather, let's privatize the distribution channels for efficiency, if that is possible. This is coming from Jerry from East Legon, and Louis from Takrady says, how can we pay realistic bills when we're enjoying poor service from ECG coupled with scanty take-home salary? Mr. Bauer. This question goes to Mr. Bauer. This is from Louis from Takrady. And then this one has no name. Says, Ghana has a problem of managing the energy sector. Over 50 years of independence, and we have an expected load shedding. Well, quickly, Mr. Bauer, is the load shedding over?
Yeah, it's over.
It's over,
yeah.
Right. So load shedding is over. Thank you very much. John Gachi is an economist, and then Edward Bauer is Communications Director at the Ministry of Energy. And thanks for your messages as well. Thanks for making time with us. Join us again tomorrow for another interesting edition of PM Express. Good night.